I'm able to still go through this process.
Brave woman, raising brave children. Proudly an immigrant mom, proud to the immigrant mom. Brave woman, raising brave children. Proudly an immigrant mom, proud to the immigrant mom. Brave woman.
I'm able to still go through this process.
Brave woman, raising brave children. Proudly an immigrant mom, proud to the immigrant mom. Brave woman, raising brave children. Proudly an immigrant mom, proud to the immigrant mom.
Welcome to the Immigrant Mom. Y'all need to see me. Like, once this intro is playing, I'm in the background and I'm just jamming. Brave woman, raising brave children. Proudly an immigrant mom, part of the immigrant mom. Forgive my voice, but I'm proudly an immigrant mom. You know, life has brought us to this pathway where we're raising children in a different country, and we have a badge of honor that says the immigrant mom. Brave woman raising brave children. I mean, I feel like if you are one, you should identify proudly with who we are, because that alone says that we have resilience, we're determined, we're evolving, we're not afraid of change. It says so much. Well, welcome everybody to the Immigrant Mom Show. If this is the first time you're joining us, my name is Ixtel Mbaacha Dobgima. I am the founder of the Immigrant Mom. What is the Immigrant Mom? It is an organization of women who are raising children, mothers raising children in a country that they themselves did not grow up in. What is our mission? Our mission is to empower, to educate, to equip this mother, because we are well aware that there are so many things that could be in our blind spot for the mere fact that we did not grow up in the same country that our children are growing up in. And today we have a guest speaker who is originally came from Mozambique, lived in Zambia, and I think there's another country I'm missing out. She'll tell us, and she'll tell us about her journey. She'll tell us about her life story. I'm pretty sure she'll share lessons with us about things she encountered, about parenting, about life, about career, about marriage, about children. Well, go ahead. This is the time, you all know, where we share the video, because we share the live stream. We want a lot of people to join. Share, tag your friends, because a good story is a story we can learn from. And today we have a good story. So go ahead and share. Go ahead and like the page. Go ahead and share even the YouTube link for those who are not on Facebook, so that they can be a part of this. We're just going to give it a couple of minutes so people can join us, and we'll have our guest speaker introduce herself.
Rukshana is originally from Mozambique but lived in Zambia in the refugee camp. Her family came to the USA through asylum, and she couldn't go back to her country because her country was in a war. Trauma about food and survival was birthed in Rukshana's life as she was waiting in line for food, and in order to be able to make it to the beginning of the line to get food for her siblings, she had to endure long wait times under the sun. She had to survive to care not just for herself, but for her siblings as an older child. As a result of this ordeal with food, she gained weight and had diabetes due to the lifestyle, because she couldn't throw food away, and she had all these health complications as a result. Rukshana shares with us today how she overcame trauma through self-healing therapy, coaches, and personal growth. When we asked her, what is her hope for the audience today? What does she hope to share with us today? She said, My hope for the audience is to know that our past does not define us. Humans are the only ones who have the capability to dream and create the life that we want. Rukshana's hope today is that you will learn that you have the ability to rewrite your story and recreate a new life. Today on the Immigrant Mom Show, welcome Rukshana Hafez Triem as she shares with us the story of her journey.
Brave woman, raising brave children. Proudly an immigrant mom. Proud to the immigrant mom. Brave woman.
Without further ado, we have so much to unpack today, so we are going to get started. Our guest speaker is Rukshana. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing your name right. She's going to come on and introduce herself. She'll tell us a bit about who she is, where she's from, how many kids, is she married, what she's about, and we're going to get into her story. Don't forget, audience, the chat box is open. If you have a question, this is a perfect time to ask all the questions that you can. Without further ado, standing ovation, hands together. Welcome, Rukshana, to the Immigrant Mom Show. We're extremely pleased and happy to have you. Can you tell our audience who you are?
Thank you, Estelle, for having me here. I'm so grateful for your presence and so grateful for this amazing platform to share other women and moms to share their story. I believe that everybody has a story and everybody's story is important because we validate each other. So I am Rukshana Triem. I live here in Portland, Oregon. I'm originally from Mozambique, and due to the war, my family fled from Mozambique to Malawi, lived in the village for about 5 years, and then we had to pack up again and move to Zambia, where we resided there for another 5 years in the refugee camp. So I'm so grateful for my experiences, for my adversities, for my stories, because they got me, all those hardships got me where I am today. I am a coach, a women's lifestyle coach. I take women out in nature for retreats. And when I'm not working or doing philanthropy work where I have the nonprofit, where I build schools in those 3 different countries that I'm from, I'm just out here with my family or visiting my kids who are now grown in different cities, if they allow me to show up in their cities, or nagging them to come home. But mostly I love what I do. I love to learn. I love stories because really story connects us, bring us together as one.
Awesome.
So that's
How old are your kids? You're out of the house?
Yeah, so my youngest is 26 years young. My middle one is 24, and then my baby one just went to college. He just moved a couple years ago, just 2, 3 years ago. He's up in California. So I live in Oregon, so it's, one is in Seattle and one is in LA. So they're not far away, but yet they're still quite far away. Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. So you're an empty nester. That's the term I hear a lot of people say when the kids are grown and out of the house. You mentioned the war in Mozambique. I'm not sure that many people know that there was a war or what it was like. If you can just, touch a little bit, what was happening? What year was that? How did it impact you? What do you remember about that time?
Yeah, so when I left, I was 5 years young, and the war happened, has happened about started in 1975, right before I was born, and it's a culture war. It's a war between the Portuguese and the African, the Bantu people in Mozambique claiming their, and then the political war came in, and then the governmental war. So there was one war, but many different kinds of war. So part of being in a country of war when you grow up, you have families who have served in the war. And my father was in the war. So because of his safety and because of the background and the history of the war, we had to leave the country for, because then when the war actually ended in 1992, that's when I came to United States. The war had ended, and then the country leader has said, now you guys can come back. By then, 75% of the population had left Mozambique. That's a chunk of population. So all of these people had gone to different countries. They had resided in a refugee camp. They went to South Africa. They went to Europe. So they had left the country. So the country took another 25 years to rebuild. As you know, most countries, when, especially I believe in developing country, takes forever and a lot of time because of the work that requires and for people coming together. So as the 1992, by the time we got to United States, by then we had spent 15 years in, 10 years in outside countries. By the time I got to United States, my family goes, we're not going back. We have nothing. We don't have everything. Our house is destroyed. Everything is destroyed. We have lost families. Like the 75% of the population had left the country. The only way is moving forward is hope, is living here in the United States. So that's where, and I came to United States when I was 15 and a half.
So from 5 to 15, that's 10 years of, living in a situation where you don't know, are you stable? And you mentioned trauma.
Yes.
Can we talk a bit about that trauma and how it bled into your life in the US?
Yeah, I think I believe the trauma that really affected me is there's the trauma of living in the refugee camps, not knowing if you're going to have food. So me being the oldest of 5 children, my job was to wait in line, because when you're in a refugee camp, a lot of food was donated from other countries, and they make big pots and big pans, and then families who are living in the tents, they have to wait in line. But my experience, I believe, then as a 10 and 12-year-old is waiting in line, shoving and pushing, trying to make it to the beginning of the line, because I will be doomed if I didn't have food for my family. And it would be just a simple food that today would look at just regular beans. So beans would be the common thing. So they would boil these big pots of beans, and then we would wait in line, and then they would scoop that in your bowl, and then I'll take that bowl home and then kind of recreate it and add some spices to feed it to my family. But the trauma was really not only about the food of survival, not knowing if I was going to have food at the end of the night or my family was going to have food at the end of the day, is waiting in line and feeling the skin peel off because it was so hot, and you cannot leave the line, because if you leave the line, then you're doomed again. You won't make it to the beginning of line. So for, if you've been to, southern part of Africa, there's a lot, it gets hot like to 107 or 114 degrees outside. So sometimes you'll be waiting for 4 or 5 hours just to get in line to get the food. And by the time you get to your tent and trying to cool off and just trying to get a towel to soothe your skin. So food was a big part of survival and the trauma.
Yeah. And you mentioned how that affected you, because then, you started to have issues with food that led to diabetes.
Yeah, so with that in the United States, so I had created this habit that, when I had my own children, and I believe almost most parents do this unconsciously, they started eating everything, right? You start eating everything. You can't throw away anything. Nothing goes to waste. Even though something is going bad, it doesn't go to waste. And then it got to a point where I was eating everything because I didn't want to waste it. I had that mindset of the refugee camp. I got so sick. I got obese. I had gained over 80 pounds. I was carrying this extra weight in my body that caused, it caused diabetes. It caused backache, because, when you're carrying so much heavy weight, it carries the body, and,
right.
It creates, and then, you have one problem, and then you get medication to help another problem, but then you have to get another medication to observe the other problem. So taking all these medication, which eventually turned into depression. And then I was taking all these other medication to, settle the depression. And then I was drinking to numb my depression. Mm-hmm. And it was just one thing after the other, that I was just not a healthy person. And I hated the person I was.
Mm-hmm. And it's thank you so much, I would say, for sharing and being vulnerable with us to, take a sneak peek into not just the problem, but the root of the problem. And I think it's a learning moment for me and even all the other mothers who are watching, because coming from a different country and the journeys that we undertook to be where we are, a lot of us face trauma, whether we call it trauma or we don't. And it's always an eye-opener to be able to see how what we're facing today, some of the problems, some of the things that we're dealing with today can be traced back to the journey that we undertook. whether it was a pleasant journey, whether it was a journey through Mexico, whether it was a journey trying to find your footing in a new country, we're able to trace it through that journey to identify what the root cause was. And maybe this is what somebody listening to us needs to know, that maybe the depression or maybe the habit, maybe the anxiety is as a result of the journey. Either way, if you can draw the line, there's help. There's a way in which you can build out of it. Maybe you can also share with us, Rukshana, how did you get through, identifying the root cause? That was step number one, and how
Mhm.
build out of it to
Yeah.
be where you are now.
I hated how I felt. I was miserable. And I'm like, there is no way a human feels that way. I'm unhappy with myself. I'm unhappy with my mindset. I was depressed. I didn't know even how to get out of it. So first of all, I knew that my problem was the weight that was causing other things with diabetes, the weight that I was carrying because I was trying to eat up everything that was in the fridge. And then, so I went to a therapist. So the therapist, again, when you become aware is the number one thing that we understand that we have a problem. And when we become aware, that's our number one step. That I'm like, okay, now I know what the problem is. Now I can go ahead and seek help. So that took a lot of courage because I believe that, how I was brought up is like, you don't ask for experts for help, or you don't pay people for help. You find the people in your community help. But then I also believe that you have to ask for experts for help because that's what they studied. That's what their background. So when going to the therapist for about a year, understanding the patterns and behaviors that I have created to settle my pain and the things that I was doing, and then creating new habits to replace those patterns. For example, every day after work, I will go to a store to go get 2 bottles of wine, and then I'll drink myself to sleep. I would have dinner, and then I have 2 bottles of wine. I would drink myself to sleep. Number one, there's a lot of sugar, alcohol, and then that's numbing me more. So the next day, it makes the other side effect. I feel groggy, lethargic because of the alcohol and the sugar that I did the night before. So understanding the concept of that, and then taking it to the next level. And then when I worked with a therapist for a year, I was able to take even more steps towards my getting better. So I joined a walking group. I joined the gym. When you're in that surrounding, you already have people in that surrounding. So you start challenging yourself. There's a little competition. So you start challenging yourself to the thing. When I joined a walking group, somebody asked me to go hiking, to climb a mountain. I'm like, what's that? Let's go hiking. I'm like, what's that? So I became curious. So the curiosity led into going hiking and explore, feeling my body changing through months and years and dropping the pounds, just being in that lifestyle of people doing different things. So that has been an amazing journey. And then also knowing what I've done to see the journey about probably 4 years later, see how I had changed my mindset, how I created a new habit, and then working with a coach, hiring a coach to work with now, because with the coach, when you work with a coach, you're like, okay, I know what my problems is. I know how I can fix them. Now I want to take more bigger actions, action. So you're more focused on the action and the deadlines and the mentorship, and so you can thrive. So I was able to take those two resources into getting better.
Right. Guys, we have the help available for those that, are in an area where they're experts, they're coaches, they're therapists. From those of us who have come from a communal society where we turn to the community to solve the problems, while there are pros and cons to that, you should know that if there are experts that can help you, if there's a therapist, if there's a psychologist, if there's somewhere you can go to get expert help, please make use of that. Rukshana, I wanted you to talk about, especially to mothers who came from a background where we heard our mother say to us, this other child down the street does not have food. You better finish up the food in your plate. And we've carried that along, maybe not really thinking about any consequences that could arise from that kind of mindset. Is it good? Is it bad? Based on your experience, is that something we should be telling our children about finishing their food because someone else does not have?
I don't believe in that because we're not the problem of the hunger. We did not create that hunger. Why are we creating this shame and guilt that we have to feed our children because someone else is starving. That message is an old way of thinking. And, I can't believe that some parents actually are choosing to use that threat for food. Food is a survival. We should, food should be a sacred thing that we're eating because we're feeding our body, nourishing our body, our mind as we're growing. So not using it as a punishment, not using it as, as a reward. Food is for survival. So yes, I heard that. And I also, when I first came to United States, it was back in 1990s, I believe, 1992. So at that time there was Somalian war. So there's a lot of women in Somalian war. So I remember this teacher in high school at that time saying that you should eat up all your food because people in Somalia are starving. And, that was the first time I heard, that, message. And I was like, wow. And I felt like she was my mom talking to me about this situation. So even in generations of family, they still do that. You should eat this, not only to African families that they're saying that, I think also to American families, they're still saying that, you should eat this because people in Africa. That is not our problem that we started. Our job as mom is to nourish and care for our children and to give them the food to help them grow mentally, physically, so that way they can be better human beings and they can start repeating those behaviors to their families in the future and their people
Right.
around them.
And I want to invite everybody to put in the comments what strategies are really good and beneficial that we can pass along amongst ourselves if we're trying to encourage our children to eat. Rather than telling them, eat all the food because someone else does not have, what ways are you using to encourage your children? Because as a mom, we cannot shy away from the fact that it bothers us when the kids don't eat. But rather than using an analogy that can create long-term problems in their psyche, in their psychology, there may be other ways that we can use to encourage our kids to eat. And I'd love to hear what you're using. I'd love to hear what worked for you. Put it in the comment section so another mom can see. Rukshana, you have walked in shoes that are dual, both as an immigrant kid and now an immigrant mom. So I want you to paint and help us to see through what it was like for 15-year-old Rukshana in the US, having survived what so many 15-year-olds had never seen. What was it like for you as an immigrant kid coming with her parents, adjusting to a culture that you experienced? Talk to us about what that was like.
I'm going to say that it was not easy. I already had experience moving to two different countries, learning different languages, experiencing different rhythm of life. So coming to America again was the third country. So Mozambique to Malawi, Malawi to Zambia, Zambia to United States, and then adapting to that. One, I think that experience has not only shaped me because of moving constantly, that built that muscle of stamina and resilience. But one of the hardest things is definitely coming as a teenager to United States is learning English and learning how to write and fitting into the culture of, as an older child, my job was to take care of my siblings. So, when I came here to United States was, they will have dance after school, or they have somebody invited you to prom and then you have to go shopping for an outfit to go, and trying to implement those cultures into my culture. So my parents are trying to figure this whole thing out, and of course, like, no, your job is to stay home and take care of your siblings. And I'm like, I'm just a teenager. I should be out there dancing with my friends and go after school and go watch a basketball game and things like that. And excuse me, they didn't know what they know today. They just tried their best. So it's like, no, we're not in America. We're in Africa. I'm like, we're in America. So it created a lot of resilience towards my parents. Like, they don't understand, but they're just doing what they know is go to school. You have an opportunity to go to school, get education, stop all these nonsense and distractions and play. Because, what you do in Africa, you play on the weekend after your chores, you go hang out with your friends, but you don't go to a school function and a school party. So not only that, I feel like that really gave me compassion when I was raising my children here in the United States. So to be able to give them those two experiences, to leave both, I'm like, you know what? My kids also grew up from two African parents, so they were trained at home, from African parents, the way we talked about education, the way we talked about the future. And then they went out into the world with a school, so they had the American culture. So we implemented those two cultures in the home, because after school sometimes they had soccer, so, and then the gatherings and competitions. So we carried those two cultures because we're in this country, so we're going to embed those two things and evolve and expand and grow. So they make fun of me now, how it was different, how I grew up and sometimes how I was raising them, but they're all part of the experience. They appreciate now that in their 20s.
Right. And that's why I said it was beautiful because, or it is beautiful because you had the chance to experience it, being an immigrant child, having, an immigrant mom. And like you said, the resentment of them looking at the American way, like, this is different from the African way. You cannot be playing if it's not the weekend. But what is one advice that you can give to an immigrant mother who did not come here young? She has not experienced the American culture. She came here as an adult, like me.
Mm-hmm.
I came here as like an adult. I have not experienced childhood in America. What advice would you give to her that you wish your immigrant mom knew when you were 15?
My advice is be open to learning new things. And it's not going to hurt to learn and ask questions from other parents. Ask questions. So when we first moved here, my parents lived close to a church. So they joined a church community. So my mom was very, very curious about, culture. So the other moms helped my mom understand why it's important for kids to play and explore new things and build new relationship, because they're going to. For those moms, it's hard, but since we're coming to a new country, it's our job also to learn the culture of that country. Just like anybody else will go to Africa, they're going to learn about our culture. We come here, we need to be open to learn about their culture. I understand that moms have a job and duty to protect their children, but also we have a job and duty to also give those experiences to our children to be better future moms, better future dads, and stuff like that.
Right. About identity. Can you talk to us about identity? Because it's a huge thing for the immigrant mom. Instilling an identity for ourselves. You'd hear an immigrant mom talk about home, and it's never really clear what is home. Is it the state that you first came or first arrived at? Is it home, the country that you're originally from? Is it home, the country that your children are born in or being raised in? There is always that question of identity, first for the immigrant mom, and then the ability to relate a healthy sense of identity to her children.
Identity, I love that you say that, Estelle, it's a big thing, as you said. It's a beautiful thing too. Is I love the fact that I identify as all. So I am an American. I'm also an African. I'm Mozambican. I'm Malawian, and I have brought those cultures into my life, into my community, and I have brought those cultures since the beginning. Since my children were younger, I have brought those celebrations. So my family come from an Islam background. So we did Eid. So my mom would fast. So we'll dress up and we'll go to the mosque and we eat dinners there, and it was, big celebrations. Like when families get married, it's a big thing. Like we dressed up in traditional clothes and we put our henna and we go out there dancing. So I have embedded that. And, but there are moms who's like, well, we're in America, we can't do this. I believe that part of our upbringing, our culture makes us more richer. And we're able to give permission to our children that you came from this richness, from the kings and the queens, and you have this richness that you're able to take this and then share that gift with the world. Like, I believe all cultures have richness in them, and you can share with the world, and you can teach with the world, and you can invite other people into your community, into your home part of the world. I just went to an Indian family gathering wedding for the first time. And it was the most amazing experience I've never experienced, and just watching the bright gold and from buying to roses and flowers and the music. And that was just like, wow. So I was able to experience the culture from totally a different view. So when we identify ourselves where we came from and where we are and embed those together, it really makes us fulfill. We should not separate. We're not meant to separate. We're supposed to embody, fill into that all, because all of that is part of us. We are from the kings and the queens. Let's embody that where we came from and share that with our children and our grandchildren and our community and our churches and so forth.
Awesome. No, that's really powerful. We don't have to separate because it does us no good to try to deny where we have come from. It's a major part of our identity. There is no superior or inferior. You would hear us say that a lot of times on the Immigrant Mom Show. It's about blending and finding what works with a blended culture, because that is the reality of our lives. You have had a chance to raise teenagers in this country. And if you were to wake up any immigrant mom from her sleep and talk about her concerns with parenting, it's about raising teenagers in this country. Number one, the world has evolved. Technology has evolved. The things that these teenagers are dealing with are not things that a lot of us dealt with in the 90s and the 80s and the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
What is your word of wisdom? What did you do? How did it work? What can you tell us? Share something with our audience.
God, teenage is such a hard age. And I remember that vividly, like it was yesterday. And number one for me is have compassion. Like take yourself back there as a 15-year-old, as a 16-year-old, and when we have compassion, we go back to our own journey and understand our pain, our growth, and we have more compassion what they're going through. And again, I'm going to go back to that open curiosity, just facilitate the conversation. Like we are the only ones at home who can have those healthy conversations and open those conversations and see what they're going through, because then it gives us a deep dive what they're feeling in their world, even though we're not feeling that because moms are so busy working or creating careers or taking care of other things at home. Just sit down and just surrender and listen and be curious. And that in itself is going to open up the conversation dialogue that's going to make you closer to your child. And I've seen that when my kids were growing up, it was so hard to have conversation because I was always coming from that judgment mindset. I was comparing my past to where they are today. But then I forgot the struggles that they're facing. They're facing with their own identity crisis as well. They're facing trying to fit in. They're trying to face the body image. And, I spoke Portuguese at home and their dad spoke Amharic. So we're speaking all these two languages at home, and then they're going to school and speaking English, and they have slightly of an accent. They're trying to fit into this American world because they don't want to have an accent. So they have all of those things that they're trying to fit into their world, into this bowl to make them who they are. And it's stressful. And then their teachers want them to do this, and then the pot just keeps adding and adding. And just kind of like our bills keep adding and adding, is when we compare our life to them, is they're just children. And they just have the mind of the capacity, the brain, they can only handle a little bit. And we're forcing that process to expand because we're adding more stressing, or because we are we're coming from a judgment place. So what I recommend is definitely just listen, ask a simple question and let them talk. And be that listening ear come with a loving, without judgment, and understand their world. You'd be amazed how much you're going to learn just from listening to them. I had my nieces and nephew this past weekend over here, and they were talking about gender identity. I mean, like from a perspective from an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, and one is a Native American and one is, she has a lot of ethnic backgrounds. And she was telling me all these histories of her ancestors, where they came from, what tribe they came from. Like I was fascinated that she's already, opened up her world, and she has accepted that just because I asked her one simple question and I listened.
Oh, wow. I feel like we would need a class on active listening to our children, just because, We hear this theme over and over with every guest speaker that we have on the show, the importance of communication, the importance of conversation, the importance of listening to our children as a very important tip that the immigrant mom needs to have. Maybe because, we came from countries or from cultures where listening to a child was not as promoted as the reality of today, where it's not even an option. We have to listen. We have to be able to, um, encourage communication with this children. A question I have for you is about helping our children when they're struggling. For every mom, it's a difficult thing to watch your child struggle, either struggling with fitting in, struggling with accepting the difference, struggling with accepting the diversity, struggling with accepting that their mom or their dad has an accent and does not look like Billy's dad or Billy's mom.
Mm-hmm.
How did you help your children? Did you see them struggle with anything of this sort? And how did it affect you? How did you help them?
I did, especially my middle child, Hannah. She was always like, these kids don't, she went to a all white Caucasian school, and she always would come home like, these kids don't look like me. So I would like go get some magazines and we'll do a collage of all these actors that look like her. And, so we cut out pictures like Halle Berry, Tina Turner, because she's got in this puffy curly hair. And we looked at pictures from Instance magazine, and we created like vision board, like these are people who are very, very successful that look like her. And so and one of the things I always say is sometimes we have to create a path in the world for others to come and follow. And as a mom, I've always noticed that, because I'm also into leadership programs, I notice how it's important to let them lead and give them that empowerment, that if you get to lead, guess what? You get to create your own identity that is going to attract other people to do that. So, and then I remember one year she had asked me to come and do a vision board of girls that look like themselves through the Girl Scouts program. So we did that as an evening event. So everybody was cutting their magazine, making a collage that girls that look like me. So they had like words like empowerment, curly hair, beautiful cheeks and freckles and all of those things. And I think we need to find places or words or communities or movies, or watch those movies that resembles like how our kids look like, and give them permission that it's okay to look because you are your own unique self.
Right. What advice would you share for a mom who does not have a kid that old, maybe 10 or 12, maybe much younger, in terms of beginning to start those activities that will instill a good sense of self, because they're different? It's always good to start younger. What sort of activities would you encourage that moms like me, I have a 4-year-old daughter, can start to begin to do to instill a good sense of self?
I believe paintings of your family, because you are already empowering that family, having those colors of family. That's the self-identity. And having movies that represent the family culture. I know now there's more, YouTube videos you can watch about, videos and movies of people of our culture. And I believe that that's really empowering our children to say, like, look, this is happening over here. And also going to cultural events. Like, I live in Portland, there's so many diversity culture events, there are arts activities and dance. So going to those events and to show up and embedding into that and being part of that belonging. So starting early, and I believe even a 4-year-old can do drumming and drumming circles and dancing and celebrating all those moments. And us as moms, we can do that too, because then we're allowing them to say, it's okay to dance, it's okay to celebrate, this is part of our culture. And then you get to invite other people to do it along. It's the small things like watching a movie, going to an event, an arts and craft events, and doing painting in a family gathering, even cooking at home together, celebrating those ethnic goods. When my kids were younger, one of the things we did on weekends is we did traditional food. So we're at the table, we had all the ingredients. One was chopping, one was folding, one was doing, all of those can be started at the early age of the experience. This is part of our culturally ethnic food.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I think I would, start to implement a lot of those things. You're really sharing great tips with us. And, I know that our guests or our audience appreciates what you're sharing with us. Let's change the tone a notch and talk about your um, NGO, the work that you do, the nonprofit. Tell us a bit about it. What inspired it? What's it about? We want to know more.
Absolutely. So when my kids left the house, I lost my identity. I didn't know who I was anymore. I was like, who am I? What's my job now? So I went back home, and back home is in Mozambique. And I visited my village and I visited my grandmother. And my grandmother, sitting under a mango tree, was saying, across the street, probably I have 500 meters. She's like, do you see those children learning under a mango tree there? And I said, yes. She said, well, those kids, that's actually a school under a mango tree. And that's one of the wonderful things about, going back is your mind also sets back to where you came from. So those things that, okay, I came from here, I learned how to write and read under a mango tree by smoothing the ground. So I'm going back, that's normal. Well, what happened is my grandmother pointed out is in America, kids don't learn under a mango tree and they don't smooth the ground to practice the letters. And then she said, you should plant a school there. And that was many, many moons ago. That was probably 20 years ago. And then I went back in 2018 and that vision came back and I should plant a school. Well, in that specific village, there's about 26 villages we're working on right now, is the country's still rebuilding after the war since 1992. So some of these schools haven't rebuilt. So the kids are still learning under a mango tree. So our job as the foundation, which I built in my grandmother's name, it's called Fremina Foundation, is building schools and hopefully to do sponsorship for school college programs to the three countries that I came from, and to give back. And so we have built already a school and a library and a teacher's lounge in one of the villages. So we have about probably 25 villages to work on. And then after that, we're going to start doing the sponsorship for college and trade school program. So that's a little bit of the work that I do, philanthropy. And then I take people with me, do culture exchange, because it's beautiful to travel and do a culture exchange. The same people in the village are curious about Americans. Americans are curious about the village. So we do this, the whole culture. So we go to the farm, we dig up sweet potatoes, we cut up, we cook, we do the grounding of the peanut sauce, we pick up coconut milk, like all these traditional things that people do there. So we get to experience the culture and the food. We get to dance under the mango tree with the drumming. We get to learn how to dance. They teach us how to dance. So it's another, I share the cultures that I have by taking people there and also giving back to the countries that I came from.
Well, that's so beautiful. And you say you have that in Mozambique, in Malawi, and Zambia.
Yes, yes.
So for people who would love to know more about your nonprofit, who would love to experience Africa, and that's what a lot of people don't know that Africa is huge. Like, there are 54 countries. We're both African, but it's different. So there might be people from the West wanting to experience what you have put together. How do we reach out? How can we be a part of the great
Yes.
work that you're doing in these three countries?
Well, that's another thing I wanted to share is so every once a year, I live here in Portland, you're all invited. I host an African fashion show where we bring all these countries together and we have all the amazing outfits and we have a runway, an African fashion show runway. And then at the end, we have a big African party and we have amazing African food and we dance. So I tell you, invited to come to Portland. It's usually at the end of summer. So, and then it's a fundraiser. So we raise the money. So the foundation is called Fremina Foundation, and it's FIRMINA Foundation. And then you can find out more about the foundation and the fashion show under that. We also have an Instagram page, and you'll see a lot of the events. And again, it's really the purpose of that is bringing people together for a common good while we're fundraising for the future, for the hope of the education. Me and planting the seed for the places that I came from that served me for who I am, where I am today, to be able to give back.
Wow, really powerful. And I must say that I'm inspired by the work that you're doing. You have used this word more than once throughout the show today, and it's compassion. And I don't know if anybody has told you that you ooze out compassion. I can feel your empathy from, where I'm sitting. I could just feel lots and lots of compassion. So a lot of people will be reaching out, I believe. I would love to be part of that show to just get together with, my African brothers and sisters. It's always a place that I love and enjoy, and encouraging everybody. If you're there, you want to come along, please let's all go together. I believe it will be fun. I want to. Hopefully I can, amidst all the business that I'm a part of. You are a coach. There's no way we're going to let you go today without you telling us about how you help other women. Tell us what you coach. What is it that you focus on? And maybe a backstory about how you got into doing this work.
Yes, so the backstory how I got into this work is self-love. And self-love is a big thing for all the mothers out there because we're constantly giving, giving, giving. We empty, deplete ourselves out. My coach is really focused on the mindset, self-love, filling a cup up. And I take women out in nature because I believe we are disconnected and we connect when we're disconnected from our phones, our children. So that way we can focus on, visualizing and praying what we want to create and the relationships we want to create with our spouses, the relationship we want to create with our children, and the relationship we want to create with our health. So, and I do that through a lot of retreats. So I host a lot of retreats in nature where I give those tools. And then if clients want more help, then we focus on one-on-one on Zoom so that we can meet and focus on helping the tools that they need or habits that they create. Like I shared with you, one of the habits I had was eating all the food for all my kids because I was afraid of throwing it away in the trash, and which led out into a lot of gaining weight and getting sick. And a lot of parents do that and they don't realize is the behaviors and patterns. So those are the behaviors and patterns that we can replace with, so that way they can create a better life for themselves. They can take care of their spouses, their children, and they can serve more into the community.
Awesome. Do you have a retreat coming up? Is there something people can join? Any information about that or how to reach you if we'd want to be a part of your retreat?
Absolutely. So the best way to do it is reach out to me, and I have retreats every other weekend. So
nice.
based on what they're looking for. I just came back from Utah, and I was in Utah for a couple of days. I facilitated one there. So usually focus where the need is, and then I'll put one together and invite people there and then put it together.
Oh, awesome. Well, guys, it's going to be in the comment section. For Mina, the foundation, as well as how you can reach Rukshana if you would love to be coached, if you feel like, there are things you're dealing with, you want to identify what the root cause is, if you want to coach, which I highly and strongly recommend, to be coached by somebody who has walked a mile in your shoes and is able to respond to what you're dealing with a lot of empathy and compassion. That's what makes a good coach different from, or makes an excellent coach different from a good coach, the ability to have empathy and compassion. Thank you so much for sharing your story, telling us about your journey. It shows your resilience, your determination, because you have experienced a lot of things that most of us have not, and still can sit with a beautiful smile to give back to your community, give back to the world, be a good mom, and all of that. What are your parting words of wisdom? What will you tell an immigrant mom who is, feeling like, would I ever be able to succeed at being the great parent of my beautiful children because I don't understand this country? I don't even know. I can't find my own voice. I have an accent. I have marriage to deal with. I have a career. I have children. What are your parting words of wisdom to this mom who is listening to you?
I hear you. I feel your pain. I feel your frustration. This shall pass, and I want you to know you cannot do this alone. You cannot do this alone. You need people in your life. You need help, and it's okay asking for help. It does not mean you're weak. Asking for help is a strength, because when you get help, you will have the tools that you need to give you the confidence to stand up with your shoulders wide open to be able to serve in a bigger way. And I really would encourage, reach out to your people in your community, call people, ask questions. Asking questions would lead into answers. And someone might not have the answer, but they'll guide you to someone who might. And just be open to learning. And honestly, our journey is a learning journey until the day we die. We're constantly learning. Today, we're learning about marriage and our children, and then after that we're learning about our grandkids, and then we go to a different stage. So we're constantly evolving and learning. So be open to learning, because this journey is endless.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rukshana. We have questions. I know a lot of people are asking questions, but because of time, we cannot go into every single question. But I promise you all, Rukshana is going to be in the comment section to answer all the questions that you have for her, responding to your inquiries. She's going to go right after this and, answer your questions. So thank you all so much for joining. Rukshana, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I was going to ask you about the immigrant mom blind spot, and maybe you can take some time and answer in the comment section, because there's always a blind spot, right? There's always that thing that we don't know, and then we know, and then we're like, oh my goodness, if I didn't know this would have had an impact. Maybe let's talk about it. I don't want you to go without talking about your blind spot. What was your blind spot? What was your immigrant mom blind spot, and how did you find out, and how did it affect things?
I feel like my blind spot is when I finally gave up my ego. Like, I don't have to know it all, and like, I can learn from my kids, and that was like mind blowing, when my daughter said, hey, I'm going to go to a basketball. I just want you to know, just because people are going to the basketball, that doesn't mean they're having sex there. It was all goes back to that, me giving up my ego, that I don't have, because I'm a mom, I don't have to have it all, know it all. I don't have to have it all figured out. So it's like, okay, so having that opportunity, and then, eventually later on, she invited me to a high school basketball. It's like, Mom, you can come. So again, that goes back to that learning and being curious, because we can learn a lot from our children, especially, in America, especially even though if you came here as a grown-up. So be curious. Kids have a lot to teach us.
Thank you. I love talking about blind spots, because as an immigrant mom, we have lots and lots of them. Please, we want to know, what was your blind spot? What was it that you didn't know until you knew, and how that affected, your life, your parenting, your relationships? Put it on there so other people can read. You never know, your blind spot, or what you now know, could be another woman's blind spot, and you can learn from that. Well, thank you all so much. We are really grateful that you stuck with us throughout the show. This is always a great time when we come together to learn. Our next show, we're going to be talking to a lady who has dealt with infant loss and dealt with infant loss as an immigrant mom. So stay tuned, like our page so you can be alerted when we come live. And for those who are looking for a community is so important. I would always encourage you to join a community so you can ask questions, so you can feel validated by the experiences that you're experiencing as an immigrant mom. We are on Facebook as a group. We have over 600 women, and it's a safe haven to ask questions. So you can ask anonymous. If you don't want to be known, you can ask with your profile so people can reach out to you. You can share opportunities with others who are looking for. We're here to equip, to empower, and to educate each other. Well, you stay blessed, everyone. Go ahead and like, share, comment. We want to see the activity to know that you really love the content that the Immigrant Mom is bringing you. And stay well until next time. This has been the Immigrant Mom. God bless you.